Join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome.
The board met in an executive session immediately prior to tonight's meeting to discuss the safety and security, a student discipline issue, and to consider the purchase of property. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda for November 14th, 2023, this regular board meeting incorporating additions and deletions?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Donato.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. All in favor? Motion passes 9-0, and I apologize. I needed to let you know everybody's present. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting held on October 10th, the regular board meeting, education and programs and policy on the 19th, and buildings and grounds and finance on the 30th?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Donato.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Maris. All in favor? 9-0, thank you. And at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to you, Dr. Musser.
Residents' requests at this point in time. Mr. Graham, please proceed.
Our first speaker this evening is Wendy Villalobos, who will be followed by Dan White.
Good evening, everybody. I don't really have a speech tonight. I'm really here to say thank you to the board. I know that you all work without any pay, and most of you have day jobs, if not all of you. So it takes a lot of time and effort to do what you do. And I just want to recognize that you stood up to some really tough issues. The first time I was here was about 18 months ago, and it was about girls' sports. And I shared with you that I was an athlete, my son was an athlete, and how important it was to protect our girls and keep girls' sports with girls. And thank you for making the decision that you made. And I hope that you rest well at night, because since that time, now there have been several things that you've probably seen in the press where female athletes are getting hurt. And, you know, my care in this community is for our kids, and that our kids are safe and our kids have opportunity. And I think that you've done an excellent job. And I hope that it continues I hope you continue to make those tough decisions. You were the leaders in Lancaster County in making some of the decisions that you've been faced with. And I know it was after a lot of opportunities for local residents to speak and share their experiences and their opinions. You didn't take those decisions lightly. They were hotly debated, but I just want to say thank you. I also want to recognize Dylan Bard this is probably one of your few meetings left in your role. And I recognize that not only do you run a business, but you're also a coach and you do the school board. And that's a lot for one individual. And I just want to recognize you as you go on to hopefully being a coach and having a little bit more personal time. And last, I want to say also for Jim Maurer for his 12 years. I know he decided not to continue on, but I want to say thank you to you. I also want to share an experience that I had in the last couple of weeks. I was in DC, and I was working with NCOSE, which is the National Center for Sexual Exploitation. And we were actually meeting with congressmen, with senators, asking them to co-sign some bills. And one of the bills is about on that, you know, all the internet problems that are out there. One of the girls that spoke, her best friend killed herself in the bathroom because she had mistakenly shared some photos with a boyfriend. And when they were no longer a couple, the boyfriend decided to post the pictures. And of course, the platform wouldn't take the pictures down after the parents begged, the students begged. So I had that experience. And then Monday night, I was in Lidditz and the DA sponsored something where they were talking about trafficking. And it just made me wonder, the person that was presenting this, it was suggested that they take this message to the schools. And the person who was presenting said that they had tried, but that there's a lot of red tape. So I would hope that if something like that becomes available, or that the school would take advantage of it so that the kids can, really be proactive with the kids so that they are fully aware of the dangers out there. It was well done and it can be adjusted. There's a person who heads up the task force now in Lancaster County. But I think the two things combined might really be helpful for kids, especially the high school students. And that's really all I wanted to share tonight. So thank you.
Dan White will be followed by our last speaker then, Jennifer Augustine Lewis.
Good evening. I came tonight to say thank you to Mr. Mauer and Mr. Bard as their term is ending. I'll start with Mr. Mauer. Thank you, Jim, for all your work you've done, for your leading the financial lead. You leave big shoes to fill, but I'm sure the board is capable. But thank you very much for all you've done in the last 12 years. I think you were here. But I just want to say thank you so much. Even though at times we disagreed on subjects, I thank you for standing up for what you believed and speaking out, even though it was hard, because we were opposites of things at times. But thank you for being a man of integrity. And Mr. Bart, thank you for being a man of integrity, for all you do for the school. A lot of people may not know it, but you've done so much for this district, not only with your time, but also with money and donations and everything else. You leave a huge hole to fill. But I'm sure that the board is capable of continuing to do what it has done, make the right decisions, make decisions that's going to move the students forward, give them the best opportunity. And as it says right on this paper, going to give the students a safe and supportive environment. It's been started, but there's still work yet to be done. So I look to the board and I say, let's keep bathrooms safe. Thank you for what you did with the sports policy. Thank you for what you did with making books that are inappropriate in the library. It's not a book ban, as some would like to say, but it's a material that if you or I would post, we would be hauled off to jail or be prosecuted for. That has no right in this library, and you did the right thing. Thank you very much. And when it comes down to bathrooms, I hope you do the right thing. Keep our children safe. So there's no opportunity for someone to sneak a picture and pass it out on the internet or anything like that. So again, thank you for all you have done, and I look forward to continuing coming here and helping the school district move forward. Thank you.
And our final speaker, Jennifer Augustine Lewis.
Good evening. I am speaking tonight in support of the British Lit course proposal that was presented by Mrs. Dicely on the October 19th Education Committee meeting. Every course proposal that's on tonight's agenda was also presented at that same meeting. However, the British Lit course proposal is not on the agenda tonight. So I'm here to ask that the board take this up tonight along with the others. The rationale for the restructuring and renaming of the British Lit course was that the course had become less appealing to students, i.e. low enrollment. I recall during the presentation that 2 board members asked a lot of questions, but never revealed their reasoning behind their questions, nor did the board ask about enrollment numbers, to my recollection. I suspect the student count, enrollment count for this course has been dwindling significantly, which was the impetus behind revamping the course. But what's most concerning to me today is that if the course proposal doesn't get approved, what happens next? If there's little to no interest in the course that we have, does it get dropped? And then we don't have any British Lit course to offer. So I'm asking the board tonight to explain the reasoning behind the line of questioning of this particular course as compared to some of the other course proposals that are on the agenda. And perhaps explain to me and to the public the timeline for approval of course changes in general. Am I correct in assuming that if this proposal isn't approved tonight or isn't approved in the very near future, that there's a risk that this course will be dropped for lack of interest? And if so, how does that serve our students well? When I look at the high school ELA offerings, it's no wonder to me that interest in the Brit Lit course has been waning. With such interesting class offerings as literary analysis, mystery, suspense, and horror, or science fiction and dystopian literature, or sports, it's no surprise our kids are choosing these over what they probably believe is going to be a run-of-the-mill, very boring British Lit course. The renaming of the course to Literary Analysis, Heroes and Legends just makes sense. And it fits nicely into the curriculum alongside these other courses. Students will be interested in taking the new course. And if Mrs. Dicely is correct, and I believe she is, our students are going to get a whole lot more out of the new course than they got out of British Lit. At the October 19th meeting, Mrs. Dicely and Mr. Wise's proposals were thoroughly presented in detail. And then they were also well defended when questions were asked. As a parent and taxpayer, I was completely put off by the intensity of the questioning. We have so many brilliant and talented faculty members who show us their passion for the job every day. I understand there's a need for the board to be thorough, but there's also a reasonable expectation that our faculty members be treated with a higher degree of courtesy and respect for their professional capabilities. Thank you for listening to my comments, and if one of you would please address the omission of the British Lit proposal tonight, I would surely appreciate it. I'm sure others will as well.
All right, Student Council, Ms. Landis.
Here, all right. So this coming week on Saturday, we have our annual variety show, which is like basically our talent show that we host every year. We did move it up a month earlier than previously because we ran into conflicts with like musical auditions, and that straight away people that were going to audition for the musical wouldn't come out for the variety show, but those students are obviously talented if they're trying out for the musical, so we wanted to get as many people as we could. Tomorrow and Thursday we have rehearsals for Act 1 and Act 2, and then Saturday's the actual show. So it's pretty exciting. It's coming up quick. But we had auditions last week and they all went pretty well. And then next Monday, I believe we are doing our food drive for I believe we drop it at the food pantry, and student council goes out all day and they collect the cans and they package them up, and then we take them over, and then we are hoping to work with Anchor Club to do their drive that they do every year. But that's what we have moving forward in the near future.
Just to add on to what Avery said, so this year we had a lot more students that were able to audition. I think part of it was because we moved it up a month earlier, and unfortunately we did have to make a couple cuts this year, but it's great to be able to showcase and recognize the talents of the students and have the community involved as well as and I had a couple of students come up to me. They were excited about being able to see the variety show, so it's great to have everyone involved and excited. Unfortunately, we did have to remove the raffle baskets that we had last year and the years before because of a couple of issues, but that doesn't stop everyone from wanting to come and watch the show. Also for the food drive, we were able to get a lot of classes and clubs involved with the food drive as well. So we set up like a small competition among the classes to see who could collect the most cans and donations. And the class with the most cans will get like a little treat. So it's great to see everyone involved with this event as well to help supply the food pantry with more goods for Thanksgiving. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate all your hard work. And as we always say, you're welcome to stay, or if you have homework, you may head on home and get cracking on that homework. Dr. Mustard, just before, just a couple things to say thank you to the students in general. Last week I went to participated with the 9th grade Junior Achievement STEM Summit, and it was fantastic. I was there last year. It improves every year, so there are a lot of upperclassmen that help volunteer with that, along with the freshman students. Probably the nicest comment I heard from a teacher that was bringing the 9th graders around that does not normally teach the 9th graders. And his comment to me was, during the section, I don't teach the 9th graders, but the kids really seem to enjoy this. It was fun. It's fun going around with the kids and actually seeing all the different volunteers and what companies and organizations they represent for it. So again, that was great. The other thing I was told was, I don't know if it was last weekend or the week before, our high school band participated in I guess would be the top level for the state for the band competition, and they ended up in 2nd place, which I think is really fantastic. So thank you with that. And just for parent comment, last evening, because my daughter is starting violin, they had the beginning strings concert at the high school, and that was really nice too. So there are really great things going on around the district. Thank you for all you're doing. And I do volunteer for Hempfield Food Bank, so we do appreciate. I'll thank you when I get the final numbers at the next board meeting. But it's really nice that you pack all this stuff, because it comes already packed and we just have to unload it and put it away where it belongs. So that really helps. Because
I just missed what the date was for the food pantry. I know.
Oh, so we've been collecting like all month, like we've been advertising for people to collect. We do drop it off on Monday though.
On Monday.
Yep.
And how many pounds did you do last year? Do you
I
remember?
don't know the exact amount that we had
I
last
think
year.
it was 3,000
I was gonna
pounds
say
in
like
that range.
3,000.
Somewhere in that
Yeah.
neighborhood. Yeah, or more. Yeah.
So that's a lot of effort to go out and solicit that much.
And the food pantry,
Solicit gifts, yeah.
food pantry on average, they're open 2 days a week, Monday and Wednesday, and they serve what would be 100 individuals. And we figure because the individuals could be one person up to very large families. So the figuring is it's about 400 people per week that we serve through that. So the food really is appreciated. So thank you.
So thank you for all you do. Fun things for the student body as well as for the community as well. Thank you for that.
Question, did you say the variety show is going to be in November?
Yeah, it's actually this Saturday,
Okay. What time?
7 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for all you do.
All right. Thank you so much. So moving into the superintendent's report, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Hall.
Sure. So tonight we have Steve Behrens from Breslin Architects to present our feasibility study. All the board members have a copy of the full study at their seats. So Steve, if you want to start.
Do you have any extra copies of the presentation, hard copies? Do you have any hard copies of the presentation?
I do not. The presentation, it was posted, and it actually is included.
Similar?
It's similar, yes, but it's the same document that was posted.
Mr. Miller, there should be one on your seat.
So
No,
that's the
not
full
it.
study.
That's not the
Yep.
presentation. This
Oh.
is the document of the study. Doesn't.
Yeah, this is those little things, yes. The presentation. Yeah, fine.
We're nothing if not flexible, right? So, well, thank you all again for this opportunity to be back. This is an exciting opportunity to share this body of work that's been going on for months, quite frankly. And so what you'll see tonight includes some excerpts from the full study, the document that you have in front of you and was posted. And while we're on this title slide, I do want to just give some credit where it's due to others, members of the team that aren't here with me tonight. First is in our office, Mark Buckaloo. He would be here again, but he's ill and can't join us. He's also the numbers guy. So if I hesitate on any minutia with regard to numbers, it's because Mark's my backup on that. But also I want to acknowledge more engineering, Ken Kaufman and his team that contributed to this, Hugh Cadzo from ELA, who's here as well. And obviously district administration and building level administration, and also Fidavia Construction Management, who also assisted with the cost estimating and providing some support with that. So a great team. So advance to the next slide. So this is just, again, the explanation of why we do this, which I did explain last time. The importance of the process is really at its core due to the cost influence relationship between making a lot of decisions for a district of this size with respect to capital needs. We really need to start from the ground up, working effectively for future planning. So the presentation tonight, it does follow the structure of the study. And so what you'll see on the screen is really a distillation of the table of contents. So we provide components to the study that are in alignment with the requirements of the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the legacy plan con process. And so if the reimbursement were to, or the state were to ever accept Plan Con Part A's or Plan Con 2.0, again, you can be assured that the document here is compliant with that. And it's divided into two parts. One is related to the analysis of the enrollments and capacities, the facility condition assessments, and then part two is the construction options. The document you have, the printed copy, is part one. Part two, we're previewing tonight with the construction options, and then that portion of the document will follow. So we'll move on to just show, this is a map showing each of the school buildings that were included in the study. It's all of the school buildings and other facilities within the district. The next slide, the next couple slides actually are important executive summary pieces that are provided for quick reference for the board and for the public as they view this document. There's a lot of information that we want to try to offer in a digestible manner. So this is what we call the assessment scorecard. And this is really a document that provides an overview of each of the buildings that were assessed. And so it allows us to see by the color coding a quick reference for the greatest needs by building and by category. So on this chart, I'll just quickly draw attention to those columns that include the most red and items that jump out to you. It's obviously Centerville Elementary School on the far left, Landisville Primary Center, Landisville Middle School, then Hempfield High School, and then on the far right, some of the athletic facilities. Now, the backup behind this is all of the assessment information that you'll see in the study, and I'll show some examples of in a moment. The next slide is a chart that summarizes the data from part one, again, in a in a convenient single location. So again, this chart has been presented before, but so I'll go through it a little bit more quickly this time. It is a key reference page, but starting from the left-hand side in column 1, we have the list of all of the schools, as well as some of the other key non-school facilities at the bottom. And as you move across left to right, you'll see the actual enrollments of each of the school buildings, columns that reflect the Power School projections. And that is both the moderate and conservative projections. And then column 8 is the Hempfield School District class size guideline capacity for each building. Column 9 is the difference. It's the difference between column 8, which is the class size guideline capacity of the building. And then we compare that to the moderate projections, either columns 4 or 5, whichever one represents the highest projected enrollment over the next 10 years. And then that's denoted there. We'll look at that column a little bit more closely in a moment. And then the far right column, column 10, is the summation of all of the assessments, the value of the deficiencies that have been identified in our analysis of the buildings. So then if we move on, so then moving out of the executive summary section of the study, we'll look a little bit more closely at how we arrived at the enrollment and capacity for all of the school buildings.
So just one question.
Sure.
Going back just for the public, the column with the money, the deficiencies, that's to fix what is currently there at the building. That does not add classrooms, remodel the building per se. It's just to fix needs like, example, new heating, air conditioning system, new roof, etc.
Yes.
It does not add
Excellent
space.
clarification, Mr. Donato. Thank you.
Okay.
So that column 10 is reflective of the assessment deficiencies. That's not adding on to the buildings. It's not necessarily addressing educational needs per se, other than what might be incidental in that work. And yeah, it's not adding classrooms to the buildings, right? It's purely repairs, maintenance, deferred maintenance, and fixing what's broken. So thank you for that. So then if we move on, then with respect to we use the Power School data that was provided. I do understand that there is new Power School data that might be available soon. This is data that was previously available over the summer. So we looked at each elementary school. The attendance boundaries are shown here. The middle schools as well, and then the high school. So each one of these is depicted. This is the Power School representation that then identifies the existing boundaries, particularly with the middle schools and elementary schools. So again, there's no redistricting per se that's taken into account with respect to these numbers. So this is as well as looking at the Power School enrollments, we also sat down over the summer with each of the principals of the buildings and did a plan such as this. This is the floor plan of the high school here is obscured for the public presentation. You'll see the details in your printed copy. But this exercise was done for each of the buildings. And actually, subsequent to the summer, the enrollment and capacity are really a snapshot in time. The usage of spaces in the buildings change year to year. So we actually did a recent confirmation, a refresh of that to identify any spaces that had changed. And we did identify some for this school year that we're in now. But we did that for each of the building, and they will each have a chart along the side that is, again, utilizing the PDE approach to which buildings, which spaces in each building get capacity. And that changes from the elementary to secondary level. But you can see how those numbers were arrived at in the chart on each building. So then that information is then summarized in this chart, which is specifically looking at the capacities and comparisons for the school building. So just a piece of that larger chart that we saw earlier. So here what I'll do is, again, it follows the same format with the actual enrollments, the Power School projections, and then the class size guideline capacity being compared to the highest projections over the next 10 years. We can go straight to that right column there, column 9. And so that depicts, in that comparison of column 8, depicts either some negative red numbers, which represent a projected deficit of space at some point outbound in the next 10 years, or in the black numerals, a surplus at each of those facilities. So as we can see by looking at the elementary buildings, a small deficit, slight deficit is identified at Centerville and Farmdale. The middle schools show, as well as the majority of the elementary schools show surplus space. But then if we look at the high school, that's where we see a more substantial deficit in space, in space allocation and over the next 10 years. And so if we flip the page, maybe to see this in graphic terms, a little bit easier to digest, I think. This is a chart that shows the comparison of those moderate and conservative Power School projections over time. The bottom of the chart shows the next 10 years out to 2032. The dashed lines are bounding the capacity calculation. So the lower number, the lower dashed line is what we would refer to as a preferred capacity of the building. That's with the utilization factor being applied that, as we discussed a little bit at the last meeting, reflects the way the school is being used in terms of the block scheduling. And then the upper dashed line reflects what we would call the maximum capacity, which is PDE's calculation of a 0.9 utilization factor of the building, just a way to show a range of capacity. And then that's compared to that blue moving graph of the projected enrollment. So what you can see is that what you probably can't see with the numbers on the bottom of the screen there is where that blue bar starts to exceed the capacity of the building is out in the 2027-2028 school year. So this is where, so just to summarize, as far as capacity and enrollment projections for the district, it's really the high school where we're seeing the challenge moving forward. And if we flip, then we can look at section 2, and I'll go through this a little bit more quickly because again we've seen this before. So what I'm showing is examples of the charts that we've developed for each building on the next slide there. You've seen this already, but what has occurred since our last meeting is there's been some vetting of this. The list of items as well as the prioritization with the district administration, with more engineering, with ELA, with our office, and then the unit costs have also been reviewed with Fidavia. So this is the culmination with these charts, and the next slide indicates a narrative assessment that was performed on the MEP and HVAC systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, with more engineering. So those you'll see in the study documents for each each building. And then finally, if part two, so this is the preview of some construction options that have been developed. These are developed to address the enrollment capacity shortfalls where they exist, the major assessment deficiencies that have been identified. And as well, now we're starting to bring in educational programming needs that we've reviewed with the building level administration as well as the district administration. What I do want to say, though, is these are not representative of recommendations necessarily for construction project at this time. These are a starting point that through subsequent phase with the conclusion of the feasibility study would begin a further detailed capital planning process that would include financing, potential project phasing, and that would then lead us into identifying and eventually approving moving forward with construction projects. So what will follow is looking at several options for the high school. So that's and those are addressing educational needs and capacity issues as well as the capital deficiencies at the building. And then we also looked at, again, based on where we identified the strongest capital needs, a potential replacement for Centerville Elementary School, and then renovations to Landisville Primary and Landisville Middle. And then rolling in, as I mentioned, the capital needs into each of those potential options, as well as so you'll see some athletic improvements as well. So we'll go through each of these, taking a little bit of time on this because this is the most fresh new material that we're bringing forward this evening. So here's simply an existing aerial map of the campus. And on the next slide, you'll see just a graphic representation of some of the site analysis, high-level analysis of the existing building and site with respect to the high school that we undertook. So significant building features that were identified is the need of the central plant, the need to maintain that during any sort of renovation or addition project. The PAC has been identified as a very a new addition to the building that's successful, that is a large, well-designed facility. So that we analyzed that as well. And then as we looked at the site, we looked at things such as the stream that's on site, the athletic fields, some issues with site circulation, took that all into account as we started to develop options. So the first option that follows here is an addition alteration concept. So we call this option 1. And so this is maintaining the majority.
Are you able to magnify that a little, the portion made modification so that people can see?
Yes, if you were to go, that is not in this printed copy. This is part 1. So we're showing this for the first time tonight, and that will then develop into the part 2 of the booklet. Okay, so
that's much better.
Okay, thank you.
Audience can see it better.
All right.
Just before you go on,
Sure.
Just again for the members of the public, you mentioned stream going through there. Could you go into a little more detail? Because when people think of streams, it's like, okay, there's a stream going through the middle of our.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
assuming
something
you're
that
referring to the underground issues.
the underground issues, but they do come to the surface. And so stream is really a technical definition in this case, not a qualitative
Right.
one. You know, you're not fishing in this stream, for example. This and Hugh, you can jump in if I'm overstating anything, but it's related to the springs that originate under the building. They go to a pump adjacent to the PAC, and then that empties into a basin that then goes under Kaufman Road And then from there, it actually is on the surface in various volumes depending on, yeah. And then- and
You
then
mentioned
works its
the
way.
important part, because I wanted members of the public to realize that our pack is being kept from being flooded because we have constant pumping going on to keep the underground water from going into the pack with it. That's the way it was designed, or when it was renovated and designed lots of years ago.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you. So I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to
Yeah.
have that
Okay.
pointed out.
Yeah, and they didn't do that on purpose. They picked the site and probably didn't do enough investigative work, but that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So looking at this initial plan here. And we'll go into it with,
Can we make that larger?
He's already made it look.
I,
That's about, can you
So
see that,
this-
Grant?
yeah,
I can't.
You should have it in your computer too, Grant. You pull it up and then make it big yourself if you want to.
It's not working.
Page 20 on your computer.
It is page 21 on your.
Okay, so the science way. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
20.
so these are relatively diagrammatic in nature. But yes, what we're talking about is the addition here as a concept, and this is a concept because there's a lot more programming and design that would have to go into this. But based on the analysis that's come forth and identifying some of the most pressing educational needs within the building, the idea here would be to create a 2-story classroom wing that would include science labs, and that would create swing space for the existing building to move through and renovate. And if we move on to the next slide, and then sort of zoom into the same general area of the drawing, you'll see that we have some graphics here to kind of represent that this would address some of those undersized classroom needs in the building by creating new classrooms, give us the opportunity to back through and renovate some of those classrooms and enlarge them to again address some renovations in the science wing area, in the old choral and band areas of the building, and then as depicted by the blue, also endeavor to improve the circulation in the building. We're aware of the bottlenecks that occur in various areas, and so again, with a lot more time and detailed analysis as we develop a program and an actual floor plan. But this gives you a concept of what an addition renovation project to the building could look like.
Sorry, but in this concept, the kids would basically stay in high school. That additional wing would be built, and while remodeling, renovating in whatever part, that's what the additional wing would be used for.
Right.
Until everything else was finished. And then-
Right. Yeah, so when I refer to the term swing space, we're really talking about a phased addition, right? So the first phase would be the new construction, which would then allow us through subsequent phases to vacate portions of the building and renovate. Right, precisely. So this, and I'll go, again, a lot of numbers here. I'll go through it on this slide. Subsequent estimates have a similar format. So we'll spend a little bit of time here just so you understand how this process. So we look at the program of the building there in those section 1 and 2 spaces of the chart. And then what we do is we develop some gross square footage analysis. How big would an addition be? How much would that interface with the existing building? How much would we look to then in the next section? What kind of square footage would we anticipate renovating in the existing building? Again, these are preliminary findings. And then we thought it best to depict this as a range of cost, because as you can imagine, through prioritization and programming of the building, more or less work might need to be identified. And so we're depicting a range here. And then, so we have a hard cost. That's what that subtotal in bold is. in the middle of section 3. Then we develop from that what we refer to as a total project cost. We bring into that fees, permits, site development, construction management, furniture and equipment that would be brought into the new building. And then there's also other construction related expenses relative to those permits and reviews, demolition, selective demolition associated with the work. And then at this stage of the game, a healthy contingency that we can assign to potential escalation or scope creep or other factors, unforeseen conditions, and then some financing costs associated with the project. And then so the bottom line there, we an estimated project cost range of a project like this between $200 and $220 million. Could that be more or less as we were to move further into detailed design? Certainly, but what we wanted to establish here was a solid benchmark range of where, based on the analysis that's taken place so far, we can really do a solid transformational project to this building that would set you on a good course for the next decades to come.
And because I have to ask, the
Sure.
furniture and equipment, that $1 million, that would be for the addition adding on.
Right.
That would not be replacing anything that's currently at the high school.
No, not necessarily. So it's not necessarily buying new furniture for the entire
Oh.
building that's associated with this work, right?
The finance charges, that's obviously not for us, for the charges for borrowing for the school. That's for cash flow and
Correct.
for stuff that's sitting for a while. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
Right.
And I just want to point out too, the public and the board, this is just an estimate based on what you're thinking we need. Could be lower, could be higher. They're not fast, absolute numbers.
Right.
Am I saying that right?
You are, yeah, because again, there's, we haven't designed a building yet. Right. Yep. Good to reiterate that point several times. So then we'll move on to option 2 for the high school. So we also,
Excuse me, I'm gonna
Yeah,
ask a question.
sure, go
I
ahead.
have no idea what he was gonna ask, but I have a gazillion questions, but part of it is, takes me a long time to absorb all of this.
This is a lot of information.
So when you say you haven't designed the building yet, so you need us to approve this and then you design the building?
Good question. So the purpose of a facility study is to identify the needs and chart potential paths forward. So, for example, and this is not a recommendation, but I think it might help you understand, you know, if the board at some point in time were to say, we want to do an addition renovation project, you get to a fork in the road. Are we doing a new building? Are we doing an existing renovation? And so that's the next step where these capital planning options would be developed further. And yes, then you get to those decision points, those decision milestones, and presumably even to take that first fork in the road and say, we want to, based on our fiscal restraints, based on what we believe to be the needs of the district, we can't afford, or we don't need a brand new high school. We've looked at the pros and cons that would come out of this, or we want to do a renovation addition project. Even to make that decision is still at a very high fundamental level. And that just gives direction to move forward with which of these get developed further.
Okay, since this is our second round doing this, can you give me a projected, possible, not hold you to it timeline of like when we're going to be at the first point when we need to make a decision, how much longer to the next decision? In other words, how long is it, when will we be in a position, or you'll be in a position, whatever, you know, where we give out contracts and we say, okay, come and do the work that we've approved? What's that timeline? Is it 1 year, 2 years? What are we talking about?
Mrs. Hall.
Right, so we're.
You're
hoping
talking
to-
basically how long it would take to do the project, once we did make a decision what we're
No, I'm
doing.
talking About how long it's gonna take
The
before we
process.
decide to do the project.
Well, that's
It-
kind of up
depending
to
on what-
us too, not just them. It's going to be up to
Well,
us
okay,
making
let me
decisions.
Ask the question this way, based on your experiences,
Mm-hmm.
would that be a better way to ask it?
Go ahead,
I just want to know this, how long we're talking about here. So. Ms.
Right,
Hall
so
first.
we're hoping that after this presentation, and you'll have additional time to absorb the information, perhaps meet with Mr. Behrens, that we would have acceptance of the feasibility study at the November Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting.
So that's just.
That's the end of the month. That's just on the condition report, right? Just as part one. Part two is a whole
That's what I'm
longer
saying,
process where we're,
first meeting.
right, at the end of the month. Yep, and so then from there, we would then start to project out what those plans look like. So that's, I mean, that really depends on what direction the board wants to go in and how we prioritize the many things we have to do and how we build out the capital plan that goes with that.
And that's for all of the schools, not just, because we're looking at the high school right now, it's not.
Right,
It's
that's
for
just
all
part of
all
it. It's
our
the whole
schools.
district. Yep.
Now, also, I thought I heard, and I may have misheard because I was flipping through this book, that Centerville Elementary might need a new building? Is that
Yes.
correct? Is that what I
Yes.
heard?
And that's next after the high school, right?
Okay, so we have the high school, maybe not, maybe renovated. Then we have the elementary
Back.
school. Do we have another school that we're thinking about needs to be replaced?
Yeah, so the summation of the options that I'm presenting tonight are 3 options for the high school. A replacement Centerville Elementary School. And then renovations.
I'm
to-
sorry, pardon me for just jumping in. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. It's substantial. Your expertise is noted. I want to be a little more practical here. How much do we have in our capital reserve fund right now? About,
Right. In capital reserve? No, 22 million.
about 22
22.
million. And my recollection from the most recent bond presentation is our maximum borrowing capacity, given our current tax base and interest rates, is right around 200 million, right?
218 is our most
218,
recent.
okay.
Yep.
So if we max out our credit card, our hypothetical credit card plus the capital reserve, we're barely all the way to option 1, which is the least expensive of the 3 of them.
Yes.
So why are we spending a lot of time talking about 2 and 3?
We still have to take care of our buildings, whether they're renovated or.
Agreed,
made,
agreed, but the
which are
option,
also affected by our capital reserves.
So you're asking why we're showing option 2 and 3 for the high
yeah,
school?
why are we
Just,
looking at
just to
option?
show you what that would cost, right? So someone might say, well, what would it cost to replace it? So we're just,
Right.
not that it's necessarily what we can or can afford to
Yeah.
do. But
I mean,
it's
I
there
feel
to
like
even
we're
say-
the couple who's out house shopping, looking in the wrong neighborhood right now. And it's,
Right, but it's just full picture, right? So you do know, like, why aren't we replacing it? Well, now you know what that would cost.
okay, thank you.
Mrs. Hall, how much of our debt drops off within the next 4 or 5 years?
It's probably a little bit longer now that we took the 15 million because it
That's
drops
really-
a little bit.
The 15
By a
million
couple
is
million.
earning money, yes.
So actually, I take that back. So our capital reserve with the 15 million, because we just got
I'm
it.
sorry.
The capital reserve with the 15 million that we just received is around 37.
37,
Yeah.
okay. But doesn't that 15 come off? Or is that the 218 million?
Takes that in consideration.
Okay.
So I
it's
asked for a
30
new. borrowing
plus
capacity.
218, okay.
Yep.
So if we max out the credit card, we might be able to afford one of these options and nothing else.
Well, I think
Okay.
we need,
Possibly.
I just want to say, we need to, this is preliminary.
Yeah.
As a board, we're going to need to spend some time digging into these different options, possibly variations of the options, and looking at our finances. We've got a lot of work to do. And
Oh, yeah.
I think the answer to your question, Linda, is it's going to take the board, I think, 3 to 6 months to figure out what we're doing. So it's not going to be an overnight thing.
I was expecting 2 to 3 years. We
Well,
take a
it
long
could
time
be
to
longer
spend
than
this.
6 months. I don't know.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So, sure, okay. So I'll just make one more comment. So I appreciate the practical approach because, you know, that is the question that's begged, but really what the feasibility study process is about is getting you to the point where you can see those numbers. In other words, this is a process that reveals that information to you so that you can, you know, choose the right neighborhood, so to speak. That's a good analogy. Appreciate that. So, you know, we have to do a thorough analysis of what the options are. So again, so we looked at an addition renovation project. We also looked at what would it look like to replace the high school in a phased manner on its existing footprint. So through a phased replacement. And again, we identified, as I mentioned earlier, the PAC as potentially a component of the existing building to retain. So here we see in red the existing building. We see in the light tan or peach color a phase one replacement of a portion of the building. So and then if you move to the next slide, what once the remainder of the building is demolished, then what the existing, or I'm sorry, the new footprint on the existing site would look like. So obviously, you know, advantages here would be that we could address the site circulation, separating bus and car traffic, really engage the open space around the building a little better, and yet avoid some of those other site features that have been identified as issues. So then if we move on to option 3, I'm sorry, there's a cost associated with each of these. So again, I went through the each line item, but this has a higher price tag. So this, again, expressed as a range, is somewhere in the $230 to $260 million range. Then if we move on to option 3.
Could you tell us
Yep.
plus or minus, because we don't know what we're ultimately going to do. Plus or minus, what are these estimates? 20, 30% plus or minus?
You mean sort of a standard
I just
deviation type approach?
They're not plus or minus 10%. I mean, they're plus or minus probably 30, 40%, correct? These estimates that you've done based on what we might ultimately do with the design. We could find ways to make it cheaper, or it could be more expensive, but.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so how much flexibility is there in these? So
In other words, I don't want everybody says, oh my gosh, look at the price tag. It might not be near that high. And it's an initial scope, but it's not a detailed design.
correct. So if there's a desire to make compromises in the design, yeah, we're not showing the Mercedes here, but we don't want to be showing the Yugo either. Apologize to anybody who has a Yugo, but
I don't think they make them anymore.
Yeah, for good reason. So anyway, but I think to your initial question about, you know, where's the greatest plus or minus type, that's really in an addition renovation option. If you make a decision to replace the building, you have less flexibility, right? In terms of we have to rebuild it. So we have to make a certain amount of investment in it.
Mhm.
Whereas if you have an addition renovation project, you can say, you know what, we're going to look more at the must-haves, at the needs, and maybe there's some lower priorities areas of the building that we would like to address, but based on fiscal restraints, we're going to prioritize other things. So an addition renovation option gives you the most flexibility in terms of prioritization.
And construction costs have escalated significantly the past couple of years since COVID. So you're using some model or basis. Is there a chance too that those costs might drop back off a little or not? Is that, and I would ask you guys.
Yeah, I
that
might
question.
refer to Mr. Sakala on that. There's not a lot of historical data about construction costs decreasing.
Okay.
They may not increase at the same rate, But I think the Turner Index probably only went negative maybe 2 times in the past 100 years.
Okay. Not decreasing, but not increasing as fast.
Right.
Okay. And this is the cost right now, not 3-4 years from now.
Correct.
Yeah. All right.
So, to follow up on Mr. Maris's question, the ranges that you have here, for example, the one I'm looking at, 248 to 286. And I'm not sure, I can't see if that's the one on the screen or not, but okay, I must be ahead of a few pages. But does
Yeah,
that
that's okay.
include, Mr. Maris is talking about a 20 to 30% range of cost. Are the range that he's talking about already baked into your estimates? Or could there be a range 20 to 30% below the minimum that you have and 20 to 30% above the max?
Yeah, I think, I don't think so. I wouldn't characterize it in that way, would you, Dan? That we wouldn't, the range is by definition intended to show a bookends, a low and a high.
Okay, and that's what I
Yeah.
thought, but then Mr. Maris's question made
I
me
would-
think that maybe that's not what it is.
I would probably disagree with that, but that's just my personal
Yeah.
opinion. So.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yes. Yes.
Pointed out, building a new building, there's decent data in the marketplace to support what new construction square footage cost to be. Renovation can be all over the map. This is extremely preliminary.
But that's, I think, what we're trying to get at, sir. We understand that the preliminary, we understand that there's a lot of unknowns baked into here. Is that the purpose of the range, or is there a degree of uncertainty that's not expressed by the range that's up here?
I would say it's not.
So you think that you agree with Mr. Maris?
Yes, yeah, I agree with what he's saying.
And you disagree with this gentleman?
But
Semantics.
Well, I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, he's saying that, if I'm understanding Mr. Gressel, he's saying that this is, the uncertainty has been baked into these ranges. And what I hear you saying is, this is just sort of our best throw at the dartboard right now, and it could be a lot more, and it could be a lot less.
On a design, it doesn't exist.
that's the point. We don't have a design yet. This is preliminary. So I think the way he expressed it, very preliminary. Don't get scared by the numbers yet. I think there could be plus or minuses at the bottom and the top range.
Well, for example, my projects I mentioned. Project, there's one, there was a part budget to support what was contemplated, on the other it was not. There was a budget constraint that pulled that project down to a number from the very beginning. That's how that design ran out, and that's how it was awarded. That's what we awarded next week, so, again, there's no design. There's no design, it's just based on square footage.
Sure. Oh, I understand that. And that's what I think we're trying to figure out, if that's what the range is designed to do. And it sounds like there's disagreement about that, and that's fine, and we can move on.
But can I just say one more thing? Because, and maybe this will help. Because there isn't a design, what these numbers represent is where the market is, we believe, right now, with respect to a building of this size, of a quality that we would expect Hempfield to desire in terms of new construction. So that we've taken a size of a building based on a preliminary program. And so it's based on data, as Mr. Sakal is pointing out, that's very current about what in this locale, a building like this would cost. If the requirements of the project change or something like that, when we actually design the building, then yes, it could very well be outside this range. But this is This is these are preliminary numbers based on a lot of due diligence with respect to professionals that are doing work like this in the state of Pennsylvania. So hopefully that can give you some sort of assurance.
I understand the argument that both of you are making. And I think we belabored the point long enough. It
Okay.
sounds like there may be a different perspective, and that's okay. We're at a preliminary stage here.
What was the range again for the option one, the renovation? You refresh my memory. What was the cost? I can't see it. 196 to 221. So you look at the incremental cost for a new building, it's not terribly more. So, and that's one of the things that we're going to have to do a lot of work, both finance options and design options to figure out what makes the most sense. And there's probably some cost savings energy wise, some cost savings maintenance wise. So there may be some inherent justification at new construction, but Mr. Keener, if you're happy where we're at, I think we let him
I
move
said
on.
that 5 minutes ago. Yes, I think we're getting bogged down in semantics. I don't think our advisors are 100% on the same page with each other, but that's quite all right. At this point, I would expect there to be disagreement.
Okay, so then we'll move on to Centerville Elementary. Okay. Oh, did I? Okay, option 3 was, I'm sorry. So option 3 is a new building that would be an entirely new building constructed on across Kaufman Road from the existing site. So this again is a similarly sized building, because we again utilizing the same sort of parameters for the assumptions as to what the building would look like, even though it hasn't been designed fully yet. And so this again, as we start to look at some pros and cons initially, and this is, while there's the advantage of creating an entirely new building, so less disruption to the existing building as the previous 2 options, there's also some negatives with regard to the location of athletic fields, the interface with those challenging site features we talked about with respect to the stream, and proximity of parking to athletic fields. So again, moving forward and the further analysis of these options that would develop, we'd start to look at and share those pros and cons with you as well. And then this also has a cost estimate associated with it. And this is in the 248 to $286 million range. All right. So moving along that flow chart now. So we looked at the high school options. We've also identified Centerville Elementary School as a building that has a combination of both a large amount of capital needs as well as educational programmatic needs. So we looked at options to replace Centerville Elementary School. And so again, there's 3 options for this to start the conversation. We did identify here that while we could replace the building, because of the siting of the building, the opportunity to add on to it, we actually are proposing a scenario where you could find some economy in the project by keeping the existing gymnasium. So you'll see that. And then again, new construction first, and so that you create that swing space. And then as depicted on this slide, then demolishing the existing building and replacing it with the separate bus and car traffic. So addressing site circulation needs. The building could stay out of the, for the most part, out of the stormwater management facilities on site. We're staying away from the wellhead location, and then maintaining that open space in the front of the building along the road and behind the neighbors there on the cul-de-sac. So.
I'm sorry, but I hate to do this because I'm missing it, but just to go back to the new construction for the brand new Hempfield High School.
Sure.
I'm looking at the cost there and I saw it on the other one, but you don't seem to have moving the athletic fields unless I just totally.
It is there. So
I just-
down under item 4, there's site development analysis, and then under item 3, there's a site development. So those in each of these scenarios involve relocation of the athletic fields.
Okay,
Because-
because I looked at the
Yeah.
one before and for the one building, basically a new building, and you have site development athletic fields as a separate item. On the previous one, if you go up to the option 2, site development athletic fields, including buildings and structure, there's a range there for that. And you also have it for the first option. It just seems to be missing from that
Yeah,
third.
it's I think it just wasn't pulled out on that option.
Okay.
Because if you look at the value of it, it's substantially higher.
Yeah, well, that's something. If it's $14 million basically to move a baseball field in the first 2, to move.
Well, it's more than that.
Well, I
It's
understand that, but I mean,
yeah.
you're moving the quad and everything else.
Quad, baseball, softball. Yep,
Everything
yep.
to where we are now, basically, or where the high school is. So it's
Yep.
got to be a lot more than 14 million
Correct.
dollars. So yeah, that was just, I noticed
So
that.
that is just because
So it's in that.
it's in there, but it's everything. It's lumped into one. We
Okay.
don't,
That's
because it's a new building, it's basically a clean slate. We're
okay.
not making that distinction.
Okay, thank you. I just need
Yep.
that because again, that could adding another $40 million to that range if it's not included
Okay,
in there. Thank you. I'm sorry, but
no problem. Yeah, I'm putting out a lot of information here, so don't hesitate to ask questions. And we intend to leave a good amount of time at the end as well. So then here's just another option for Centerville, a slightly different alignment of the building that could, again, depending on what we have to do with stormwater management and so forth, this might be a better orientation for the building. I should point out that option 1 and 2 are 3-story classrooms. So that provides some economy with respect to the site development, smaller footprint for the building, but that would be unusual for Hempfield. You don't have other 3-story elementary schools. It's, so that's an option again, from a educational perspective that could be evaluated moving forward. So we thought, based on what your precedents within the school district, we also wanted to look at a 2-story option. And so that's what's reflected here. Obviously, the footprint grows, but we can still work around the existing building so that it can be occupied during construction in a phased manner. And so this is an option for that. And again, how the site development would occur. So, and then we have cost estimates with this. I will point out that this is really a cost estimate for options 1 and 2. We did not, as of this moment, develop a concept for option 3. It being a larger footprint and more site work associated with that, the cost would be slightly higher. But in any case, we're depicting this in the concepts that I showed in a $52 to $56 million. And again, that's total project cost, including contingencies and a range based on current market conditions for buildings of this type. And then without graphics behind it, because it's building renovations, we've also included some budgetary cost estimates for renovations to Landisville Middle School, Landisville Primary School. And again, how did we arrive at these? We looked at the areas of the building based on the assessments and deficiencies that have been identified that require what we're calling here extensive renovations. That's moving walls and reconfiguring space and doing the mechanical systems to accommodate that versus what we're calling general renovations, which is more finishes and upgrades, technology improvements, but not going in and gutting things and moving walls around. So those are categorical distinctions that we're making within an assumed preliminary design of the building at this time, and then that's what works its way through to the project costs at the bottom for both of those.
Just so I understand this, for both of these, this would be, just to make up an example, if you had two small rooms and the idea was to get another larger classroom, that would be something you could do in this as opposed.
Right. So and we're confident with that because we haven't identified a capacity pinch at these two buildings. So we can work within the existing footprint, improve the conditions. We don't need to add on to we don't need to add classrooms to the building because the enrollment projections just simply don't justify that need.
And I get it, for the members of the public here, neither of these two buildings have ever been renovated.
Right,
Just-
right. And that's why on that scorecard, you saw greater deferred maintenance needs because they haven't gotten the same kind of attention that some of the other buildings have been in renovations. They've obviously been well maintained, but they haven't been fully renovated. Okay, and then the final option to discuss is related to athletics. And so here we're zooming in. So this is separate from the other athletic features that we've been talking about in terms of relocating fields for new construction. This is addressing the needs associated with the stadium, which is really separate. So we know that there's efficiencies primarily with restroom facilities at the stadium. So how could we potentially address that? Well, we could create a new restroom concession stand building. It could be located, here centrally located to be utilized by both the stadium and the quad. And so we've done the calculations to determine what the actual code required toilet facilities are. And we mocked up a preliminary building plan that would address that, showing concession stands on either end. And then so this is something that would address those needs in the stadium complex. And then that would then allow us to, if we go back like to the site plan, yeah, thanks. That would then allow us to go through and renovate some of the other accessory buildings to improve the locker room situation, improve team room situation. But we know just from our analysis that we've done so far, there's no way to renovate those buildings and add enough restroom facilities to satisfy the capacity and the needs of those spectator facilities. So that's why we're taking this first step towards solving those problems by addressing that most critical need. It's not anticipating a simultaneous spectator, competition event happening at both the quad and the stadium simultaneously. That's not really something that occurs. And if you were to try to accommodate both of those needs with toilet room facilities, the numbers would just go off the charts. So that's what this option represents. And then again, preliminary floor plan on the next page, and then a cost analysis of what that would be. And this is separate from the athletic field site development numbers that are expressed in the other options. So this would be a standalone option to consider. And so this is a robust masonry facility, very similar to multiple projects we've done recently and it seems like there's been, we've done literally 4 or 5 of this type of building in the past couple of years. So we have very fresh numbers on this. And this is not a Band-Aid type building. This is something that is going to be robust and built to last for decades. And so that's the assumption with these costs. And then that would be in the $4 million range. So again, provided a lot of information here in this discussion. We anticipate, as Mrs. Hall pointed out, that would be some time required to digest this, but we wanted to put it out and open it up for further discussion and any questions.
Is it safe to say that your renovation numbers do not include any energy savings that would come with new construction?
That is correct. So this is the hard cost of construction. We have done some preliminary analysis, and as we develop part 2, we're going to vet that and provide it. So a new building, particularly with a new envelope and all new systems, yes, we can do some analysis to determine what a potential energy savings would be. And I think as has been discussed, when you're considering options, you could look at that as savings to potentially offset. Are those of such a magnitude that it's going to cost you or save you tens of millions of dollars in analyzing these? No, but it's not insignificant numbers either. And so we can provide you with some of that.
It typically isn't insignificant when you look at a building project that's new and that savings is year over year times 25 to 35 years.
Right.
Or even longer.
Yeah. Yep. When you do that analysis, it adds up over time and it reduces the burden on future budgets that the district needs to support.
Justin, that's an excellent point because life cycle costing can be part of the way that we justify newer construction. And it's not just energy maintenance costs. I don't know if you've looked at that. Maybe we need to talk some more about that later, but maintenance costs and energy savings can be significant, especially when you look over the lifetime of new construction versus renovated construction.
Yep.
And I don't want to project anything, but having been through building projects with the district before, after doing a lot of vetting, it typically showed that going to new construction in the long run was the wisest from a financial standpoint. However, it requires upfront capital cost and capital dollars to do that. And sometimes districts cannot truly afford that. So it is something we have to consider. I would also just ask, as part of this feasibility study, were you charged with looking at any consolidation? And what do you see as and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm asking you because I want to check to see that I'm all right. What do you see as the minimum number of students per building to be efficient with the common space, the use of, I'm talking cafeterias and those types of things? Where does it become inefficient? What's that number? What's that bottom number?
Okay. So to the first question, no, we did not look at consolidation. I think as you look at the surplus at the elementary school level, it's not equivalent to an entire building. So something that could be evaluated, perhaps if a new building were constructed that was larger, but we have not done that analysis. So to your second question about, can you refresh my memory on that? Sorry.
No, I don't remember. It was related to the number of students.
Oh,
at the
yes,
bottom.
more facilities.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yes, as part of the study, we do, and when we're looking at the enrollment and capacity of the buildings, we are analyzing the core facilities. So cafeterias, gymnasiums, libraries, even things like the administration suite, is with new needs reflective to additional staff that's coming on board. How would we accommodate them? And so, yes, there are rules of thumb associated with that, which we utilize for this type of analysis, and it varies
Like,
based on.
what is that bottom number? I think I know what it is from a past life, but I guess I'm looking for you maybe
The
for an
bottom-
update.
I'm sorry, which bottom number?
Meaning the bottom number of students, when you have common space, for example, the cafeterias, gymnasiums, it's best utilized when you have X number of students, a minimum of X number of students in that location. That's why I ask about, did you look at part of the feasibility study, any consolidation? As you look at some of those numbers you gave us, you see 3 of those buildings, you begin to see a drop in enrollment to the point that it's under 500. And I'm just going to lay it out there. The threshold that I understand to be the minimum amount to be the most effective is 500 students in a building. If you have less than that, my understanding is that your efficiencies begin to significantly drop. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm not challenging you, I'm just suggesting,
No,
what is that an accurate number?
If-
And then do you need to look at long-term strategically as part of a feasibility study? Does it make sense to have a separate building when you're running 300 to 400 students per building times 3? Your efficiencies come from scales of economy and use of that common space in it with more students rather than less. I'm not suggesting that's the direction we go, and I'm probably touching a nerve with some people as I even bring this up, but I think as a part of a feasibility study, you have to look at that. The building costs typically go down. You only need 1 set of common space. You're not transporting food. Now, sometimes you're transporting students, but there's a trade-off there. And so I guess as part of this, I'm asking, maybe we didn't charge you to look at that, but I would expect that we would know where that threshold is, and that might be part of consideration as we look at, I'm talking really long-term plans, maybe even beyond just the high school. Does that make any sense?
It does. Everything you're saying is accurate, and there isn't, I wouldn't say a magic number of students. It's really, but I think what you're saying is the same thing I'm going to say, which is it's really a square foot per student in the building, right? And so that would so if a building is designed, let's say for 750 students, and now you're dropping below that, yes, your efficiency, if you want to think of it that way, is going down. In other words, so what we do in our analysis is really look at the maximum number of students that should be in that building, right? If you go substantially less than that, your efficiency is going down, right? You will have empty classrooms or, whatever. So, or small class sizes, so there's different ways to look at it. We were not charged to do that. What the numbers you see represented in this document are the maximum number of students that building can support.
And in fairness, we're not far off on those numbers currently. Most of our buildings are running 500 to 600 students. And as far as a high school project goes, that doesn't really come into play at this point. I would just also follow up with, and I think I made this comment earlier, and this is just more informational, that we're basing our square footage needs at the high school and any additional space on our current enrollment, projected enrollment, and also our current block scheduling. Correct? Okay.
Yeah. So as I'm thinking, let me just say one more thing about efficiency. So it's a qualitative analysis as well as a quantitative one, in the sense that when these buildings that were designed, let's say for 750 students, they also they were designed prior to a lot of the trends and the needs that we're seeing today with regard to small group instruction, special ed, things like that. So a lot of these buildings maybe don't have the small group instruction space or the pullout space or the offices that are needed to support the additional staff. So when you may look at a quantitative analysis of that building, but if you walk into that building today and the numbers tell you, oh, there's space for another 100 students in this building. Well, it doesn't feel that way because that building is not, it was not designed for the current educational delivery. And so we're having to make do in those spaces by maybe taking a classroom and utilizing it as a small group instruction space because one doesn't exist. So I hope that puts a little context on it.
Yeah, and that helps. And that also highlights some of the challenges with renovations because you're working within a floor plan that may not meet today's needs.
Correct. Yes.
So speaking to that, kind of piggybacking with the new high school, would the efficiency, because it's designed better, new construction require less square footage per student than our old high school? That's probably a loaded question.
It is. Yeah, I think philosophically, yes. In other words, the building that's designed today for today's needs is going to inherently be more efficient than you trying to utilize a building that was built decades ago or in addition to a building decades ago. I think the answer to your question is yes.
So quick question, the two options with the new construction, were they less square footage than our current high school? Can you tell me that off the top of your head?
They are, I believe they are, because what we did was we took a presumed building program, a capacity of the building, and we said, again, to this efficiency perspective, what size building do we see in our design experience that serves a population of that size? So no, we're not necessarily saying we're going to make the building the same square footage as the existing.
You could probably give that number at a later time.
It's on the drawing.
It's in here.
It's in there.
I just
Yeah.
didn't, I couldn't tell.
If you look at the bottom of each of those options, the statistics associated with it will be there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I just have to say, I mean, it's a little premature to consider this, but I know you talked about the 2-story versus the 3-story building. Typically, there are efficiencies when you're going up versus going out. And that also goes along with the fact that you end up having additional land needed for your water runoff and some of your other issues. So I know that apparently this district hasn't considered that in the past, but I do think it's a valid thought, and I'm glad you worked up that type of an option.
On a quick question about the elementary school. So it looks like, what was the needs analysis to build an elementary school or adjust it? It looked like it was renovated in 2003, I think it was, something like that. And then it looks like the enrollment's only going up minus 12 students.
So it's a good question. Yes. So let's in the facilities planning industry standards, there are ratios that are developed. So so to take Centerville as an example that's on the screen right now, it's a very simple ratio between the identified deficiencies as a numerator, the cost of new construction, that's just the hard cost of construction. And then you can look at a very simple ratio of those two things. So then each industry, each building type then would analyze that differently. So when we see an analysis like this approaching 50%, in other words, the needs of the building as a dollar value compared to the cost of new construction, when that's approaching 50%, that's sort of the threshold where we would say we need to seriously consider replacing this building. So other factors go into that. If those deficiencies don't necessarily capture all of the educational programmatic curricular needs. So then if we also, through meeting with the building principal, identify that, yeah, there's educational deficiencies that should really be addressed here too beyond. So that then could swing that one way or the other. A lower ratio might still warrant a replacement because it has all kinds of other deficiencies that we want to address. And so if you were to look in the marketplace, certain other building types could be a lower ratio, but school districts are a unique building owner operator in the sense that you are owning, operating, maintaining these buildings for decades. They're very robust, well-constructed buildings. So that's why, you know, we look at something in that, about that 50%. If you're getting to 60% or 70%, definitely, you can't justify sinking that much money into an existing building because it's not going to be able to address all of the needs. And you're going to be back here in another 10 to 20 years with another renovation to the building. So we thought it might be helpful to just have this at the ready to go down that road of explanation.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions, we will set up a time after you've had time to review the full study, to ask additional questions, and then we're hoping to have acceptance of the report on the Buildings and Grounds meeting at the end of the month. Thank you, Mr. Behrens.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
So 2 more quick informational items. Please pay attention to the calendar of events. We will be back here again on Thursday for our Ed and Programs and Policy meeting. And the enrollment report is attached as always. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, moving on to the president's report. I have nothing to report. Moving on to representative adjunct reports. Lancaster County Career Technology Center, Mr. Keener.
Thanks, Mr. Bottom. The JOC met on October 26th at Willow Street. It was a routine meeting in all regard. And the next meeting will be December 11th at Willow Street, at which time the JOC will also reorganize.
Thank you. IU 13, Mr. Maris.
Yeah, the one thing I thought I'd bring up that we talked about, the executive director, the Basic Ed Funding Commission is still doing a couple more hearings. I think the last one is actually a couple days from now. There's supposed to be a report come out. The report is to come out the 11th of January. Tab, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. If you're, I know that's more Bremersky.
That's our understanding as well, as they're continuing to work through that formula.
So they're working to see, because there was a court case and they said the funding wasn't fair. So this commission is being tasked to look at all these different, go to these different hearings, and maybe it'll help to be ultimately fair funding, but don't count I wouldn't bet on it.
That's well said.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Maris. Moving on to Hempfield Area Recreation Commission, Mrs. Johnston, Mr. Wagner.
Nothing new other than to remind everyone in the room that Extra Give is going on right now this Friday, 11/17. So
Go to raise 10,000.
correct. So anything you could do would be greatly appreciated. It's great for our community. Thank you.
Thank you both. Safety and Security, Mr. Garber.
Nothing new to report.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. PSBA Liaison.
I left my notes at home, so I'll spare you the details, but there was a delegate meeting on the 4th of November, so I participated in that delegate meeting. That was Saturday morning. And there was nothing profound that did come out of that. There were a few things that were being pushed as to be added, and they got voted down. So I don't really have anything to report, so I'll spare you the details.
Thank you, Mr. Walgamuth. Moving on to standing committees, Builders and Grounds, Mr. Maris.
Yeah, we met on October 30th. 3 main items were the Train Hempfield High School Chiller Project. Mrs. James presented information regarding that project. We also talked about the Buchanan Gym sound system. Mr. Graham gave a presentation, and it looks like we have some existing equipment that can be utilized to make that sound a lot better in our Buchanan Gym. I think we actually might have even approved something at that time, if I remember correctly.
We did.
And then feasibility study, we just talked about that for a lot, so nothing new on that.
Moving on to Finance, Mr. Mauer.
The vast majority of the annual audit work is done. I believe for our finance committee meetings, we will have at least draft financials, if not finals. I'm not 100% where that is. I know there's been a little bit of a challenge there in finalizing things. So I would count on preliminaries for the finance committee meeting. Additionally, the state and the federal government have not approved sections of the budget for funding for schools yet. So we do not have any definitive actions or funds coming our way until that's completed by the government.
Thank you, Mr. Mauer. Education and Programs, Mrs. Johnson.
You can refer to the meetings, the minutes of our last meeting. We have a meeting this Thursday that starts at 5 o'clock. Some of the questions that were raised tonight by Ms. Lewis, is that the right way to address you? I believe we're going to be talking about some of those things. I don't have the details right now. I don't know that Dr. Dandridge will address them Thursday in future meetings, the questions that you had. Do you have anything to add?
We're going to be doing a data presentation on Thursday, as well as the state assessment information has just come out from PDE over the course of the past week. So we'll do an overview of that, followed up in December with some more building specific data.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Policy, Personnel, and Legal, Mr. Keener.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. We will be voting on the first reading of, let me find them here, searches and student government. Those amendments, which are relatively minor, are in your presentations. And then there will be second reading of reporting student progress, student fundraising, student involvement in decision-making, and pregnant students. Those changes are either non-existent or de minimis, and that's why they're going directly to second reading. Of note to the student council, the first reading does include memorializing your seat at the table, which has been a long-standing practice, but we are memorializing it in the policy.
Thank you, Mr. Keener. Moving on to personnel action items. I'd like a motion to approve personnel action items as presented and or amended.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Maris.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Donato. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Did you raise your hand, Mr. Maris? Oh, you
Yes,
made a
I'm
motion.
sorry. I did. Sorry.
Motion passes 9-0. Moving on to financial action items. Motion to approve financial action items 10B through 10F as presented.
And request approved.
Thank you, Mr. Mauer.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you. Moving on to buildings and grounds action items. Motion to approve buildings and grounds action items 11A as presented. Presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Maris.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Donato. Any discussion? All in favor? Terrific. Motion carries 9-0. Other action items. Motion to approve other action items 12B through 12J as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Donato.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wolgemuth. Any discussion?
I just have a question.
Yes, sir.
Under section F, extracurricular clubs, I do not see our LGBT student club listed.
These are just the clubs that are occurring after school, that not all the internal clubs that are occurring during our flex period are those are all
Okay.
handled in the administrative ways.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure that, okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Maris.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned.